armed, airborne, and dropping onto your deck. US Marines are seizing ships in the Arabian Sea. One vessel searched, another disabled, boarded, taken. Iran is calling it piracy. And somewhere between a blockade and a battlefield, a 6-hour standoff just changed everything. Has the next war already begun at sea? The waters of the Arabian Sea have become the latest flashpoint in the escalating confrontation between Washington and Tehran. What began as an economic blockade is now unfolding on the high seas, with armed boardings, vessel searches, and threats of retaliation raising fears of a wider maritime crisis. The United States Central Command announced that US Marines intercepted and searched a commercial vessel in the Arabian Sea on April 28th, after it was suspected of attempting to reach Iran in violation of the ongoing American naval blockade.
Earlier today in the Arabian Sea, US Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit boarded MV Blue Star 3, a commercial ship suspected of attempting to transit to Iran in violation of the US blockade of Iranian ports. US forces released the vessel after conducting a search and confirming the ship's voyage would not include an Iranian port call. American forces continue to operate and enforce the blockade across the Middle East. So far, 39 vessels have been redirected to ensure compliance.
US officials described it as the first seizure under the current blockade. According to the military, the vessel ignored repeated warnings over a 6-hour period. Troops from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit were launched from the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli. Video footage showed Marines descending by helicopter onto the deck of the cargo vessel in a coordinated boarding maneuver. Before the boarding took place, the guided missile destroyer USS Spruance reportedly disabled the ship's propulsion by firing 5-inch Mk-45 naval gun rounds into its engine room. American officials defended the action, saying multiple warnings had been issued and that the seizure was carried out in a deliberate, professional, and proportional manner. They added that at least 25 commercial vessels suspected of heading towards Iranian ports had already been redirected since the blockade began. The latest action brings the total number of vessels redirected or cleared under the blockade to 39. The blockade itself took effect on April 13th, following the collapse of peace negotiations between American and Iranian officials in Islamabad. CENTCOM, under the command of Admiral Brad Cooper, stated at the time that the operation would apply to all maritime traffic entering or leaving Iranian ports and coastal waters. Officials also stressed that freedom of navigation would continue for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian destinations. The blockade, ordered by President Donald Trump, was described by CENTCOM in its opening days as having fully halted seaborne economic trade in and out of Iran. Tensions rose further after CENTCOM released footage of a separate operation involving an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel in the Sea of Oman. The ship, identified as the MV Tuska, was reportedly intercepted while en route to Iran's Bandar Abbas port. Iran strongly condemned the seizure, calling it a violation of the ceasefire and describing it as an act of maritime piracy. The Qatam al-Anbiya central headquarters accused the United States of attacking a commercial vessel and deploying what it called terrorist marines. In a warning statement, it declared,
"The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will soon respond."
The incidents mark a dangerous new phase in already fragile US-Iran relations, shifting confrontation from diplomacy and sanctions to direct action at sea. Even as a ceasefire holds between the United States and Iran, the Pentagon is quietly preparing for the possibility that it does not. According to CNN, US military planners are developing strike options targeting Iran's defenses around the Strait of Hormuz, with a particular focus on the small fast attack boats, mine-laying vessels, and coastal assets Tehran has used to effectively shut down one of the world's most critical shipping lanes. The planning comes as the strait remains largely closed to international tanker traffic, a situation that has rattled global markets and complicated US President Donald Trump's domestic economic agenda. Iran closed the waterway in response to the opening of US-Israeli strikes on February 28th, and ships have largely refused to transit it since. But reopening it through military force alone may not be straightforward. One source familiar with the planning put the dilemma plainly.
Unless you can unequivocally prove that 100% of Iran's military capability is destroyed, it will come down to how badly Trump is willing to accept the risk and start pushing ships through the Strait of Hormuz.
CNN has previously reported that according to US intelligence assessments, roughly half of Iran's missile launchers and thousands of one-way attack drones survived the initial bombing campaign. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth acknowledged last week that Iran had moved some of its remaining assets to new locations during the ceasefire period. Beyond the Strait of Hormuz, planners are also weighing strikes on energy infrastructure to pressure Tehran toward negotiations, as well as targeted operations against specific Iranian military figures believed to be obstructing a diplomatic agreement. Among those named is Ahmad Vahidi, Commander-in-Chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Pentagon declined to confirm the specifics.
Due to Operation Security, we do not discuss future or hypothetical movements. The US military continues to provide the president options, and all options remain on the table.
Trump has said he would prefer a diplomatic resolution and has extended the ceasefire, though sources say that extension is not indefinite. The US currently has 19 ships in the Middle East, including 2 aircraft carriers, and has redirected at least 33 vessels since enforcing a naval blockade of Iranian ports beginning April 13th. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has seized 2 cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz and is escorting them to the Iranian coast, the sharpest escalation in the waterway since the ceasefire was extended just hours earlier by US President Donald Trump. According to multiple reports, at least 3 vessels were attacked by Iran on April 22nd. The MSC Francesca, a Panama-flagged container ship, was hailed by an IRGC gunboat and ordered to drop anchor while heading south out of the strait into the Gulf of Oman. It reported damage to its hull and accommodation. The Greek-owned Epaminondas was fired upon 15 nautical miles northeast of Oman, sustaining heavy damage to its bridge. A third vessel, the Panama-flagged Euphoria, owned by a UAE-based company, was hit 8 nautical miles west of Iran but reported no damage. The IRGC confirmed it had seized the MSC Francesca and the Epaminondas, saying both vessels had been operating without proper authorization and had tampered with their navigation systems. The seizures did not come without warning. Iran has said consistently that any passage through the strait requires prior permission and coordination with the IRGC. Reports now suggest Tehran is also moving towards imposing transit fees on vessels seeking to pass through. For those who did not comply on April 22nd, the consequences were swift. The timing is also hard to ignore. Trump had announced an indefinite ceasefire extension only the night before, maintaining the US naval blockade of Iranian ports. An advisor to Iran's lead negotiator called the extension a ploy to buy time for a surprise strike. Within hours, Iranian gunboats were in the strait. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Centre, which monitors commercial shipping in the region, had flagged the first attack early in the morning and urged all vessels to report suspicious activity. An Iranian cargo vessel has crossed the Strait of Hormuz despite a US naval blockade now entering its second week, as shipping traffic through one of the world's most critical waterways grinds to a near halt. The Sharjah 2, a general cargo ship, departed Shahid Rajai port near Bandar Abbas on April 14th and was tracked heading towards Kandla port in India. Bloomberg reported the vessel crossed the strait before going dark, switching off its location signal shortly after passing through. It is the third reported Iranian vessel to make the crossing since Washington imposed restrictions last week. 2 oil and gas tankers also transited in both directions earlier, but the broader picture tells a different story. US Central Command has turned back 27 vessels since the blockade began, releasing footage of a helicopter gunner warning a cargo ship over the radio that it had entered a restricted military zone.
Since the commencement of the blockade against ships entering or exiting Iranian ports and coastal areas, U.S. forces have directed 27 vessels to turn around or return to an Iranian port.
According to tracking data, only 16 ships were recorded crossing the strait on April 21st, with around 800 vessels stuck in the Persian Gulf. A day before, on April 20th, US Marines rappelled onto the Iranian-flagged Tuska in the Arabian Sea after the guided missile destroyer USS Spruance disabled its engines following 6 hours of warnings. Tehran called it maritime piracy and warned of retaliation, with Iran's foreign ministry branding the blockade collective punishment amounting to a war crime.
Not merely a violation of the ceasefire mediated by Pakistan, but a criminal act and collective punishment amounting to a war crime and a crime against humanity.
According to reports, Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir spoke with US President Donald Trump, warning that the blockade remained the key obstacle to resuming nuclear talks, to which the POTUS has promised to address the concerns. A 2-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran expires on April 23rd. Trump has said an extension is not likely, and Iran hasn't budged either. What happens next is anybody's guess.